Hi, Nancy.
We had such a good time with you last time. We had to have you back.
Hello, hi. How are you guys?
Yeah, we are fine, Melani. How are you?
I'm good, and sorry, Rahul, I only saw your message just a little while ago.
No,
Sorry.
it's okay. It's not that much intense. And how's weather there? Because we are experiencing continuously 10 days rain here.
Yeah, same here. Actually, about 2 weeks back, there were severe droughts, especially in the north and the dry zone. So there were like severe droughts. And then about 1.5 weeks ago or so, it started like continuous rain. It's been pouring down, and there were floods as well.
Mm-hmm. Same.
So it's very like I mean, both situations are quite intense, I would say, the drought and the rain both, even though they're like soon after the other.
Mm-hmm.
How did that go on? Service members didn't get paid. They don't want that. Okay, who's on? Who's on a?
So, Nancy, Robert,
Yes,
Getry, we can start in 1 minute. We can wait for. Um, and So, Melanie, today's agenda is to follow up on your last dialogue. I think uh, we left with last three slides of yours, and it is like we are requesting you to you can start with that last three slides, and then
Yes.
we can uh, discuss more thoroughly on what's your plans regarding climate actions in Sri Lanka, right? But before starting, I will give a little bit summary of your session that we conducted previously. It's very short, and if I miss anything, you can please add in your talk, right? And yeah, that's all we have on the site. So can we start?
You nicely dressed.
Sure.
Yes, would you
Nancy?
Kelvin wanted to send his regrets that he had to leave. He has a son that's in the hospital now. It's good news. He's having an operation that he needs. But
Oh,
so
so sorry to hear that, man.
so actually it's good news. It's good news. But
Oh,
because he's been waiting for this for more than a month. And so
oh,
that's a good thing, but that's why he had to leave.
so Rahul, are you going to do the summary, the brief summary, and then I'll bring up the last three slides for Melani?
yes. Yeah. So can we start?
Yes.
So hello everyone. I am Rahul from India. I'm a member of Equatorial Voices Network. We are welcoming you for a follow-up session with Melani Gunathilaka from Sri Lanka. On 15th August, she shared a very insightful presentation of her work as well as past history and currently what's happening in Sri Lanka regarding climate crisis and human rights. And before starting with her, I will give you I will give you summary of her previous session, what she discussed and all. So here we starting. Melani started with geographical information of Sri Lanka, where it is located and all, and how geography is enriched with the various resources that Sri Lanka have, and how the weather patterns is happening, and what kind of activities they communities conducting in their localities, that she explained very well. And then she also explained the two rainy seasons that monsoon produced, and that was the southwest monsoon, and other one. Then she explained the island rich biodiversity and the growing population issue. Sri Lanka is one of the 34 biodiversity hotspot in the world, and then highest biodiversity per unit area of land amongst the Asian countries. And as I remember, she also explained how it is similar connection with the geographical biodiversity hotspots where she is working. Then she shared some stats about wet zone rainforest are home to nearly all of the country's woody economic plants, and about 75% of its endemic animals. And she also explained the wetlands, diverse wetlands that comprises 103 major rivers associated with the marshes. Then she was explaining in the context of human rights, the issues that arising of increasing population, and how it is affecting to the various means of climate crisis. And she shared the current population of Sri Lanka is 21 lakh 90,000. Sorry, I misinterpret. Might she correct me?
21 million.
Yeah, 21 million. Sorry. And she also shared the total land area, which is 62,710 kilometers square. And then she explained the risk associated with the climate change, which includes sea level rise, droughts, floods, landslide, coastal erosions. And also she shared few instances. I won't call it as mm, I don't need to call it as few, because there were many instances that Sri Lanka is experiencing in terms of climate crisis. And the major one is tsunami, as far as I know, because it's all washed up during those days. She also explained that. And then the how people get migrated because of climate crisis. And there are various means like drought and floods that occurring during those seasons. And competition over shared spaces, like encroachment, deforestation, habitat degradation, then crop cultivation, reduced predator pressure, climate change. And she also shared significant numbers of human and elephant deaths in Sri Lanka. This is very growing issue that we also experienced in India, in Tamil Nadu and Kerala, where there is a dense forest. And then she shared few graphs regarding how how drastically forest is decreasing over the years, and the last one was 22% dense forest and 7% uh, open forest in 2010, which is that against to, like, in 1956 there were 44% of dense forest available in Sri Lanka. Now it is only 22%. And then coming with that, all of these issues, there is economic crisis which is happening. uh, I think it's regular issue that Sri Lanka is facing nowadays, and it has impacts. She shared, like, it's not like it comes as an instance, but it is pre-plan, not pre-planned, but things going in that way, that the country is in economic crisis. And overall, this is what we have during her session. And she also going to speak over water crisis and ethnic conflicts in her upcoming slides. So thank you everyone, thank you Melani. I uh, gladly welcome you in today's follow-up session. And now I'm over to you to present the left slides of yours, and we can have open discussion post this uh, 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 talk. And yeah, thank you. Over to you, Melanie.
Thank you so much, Rahul. This is where I left the presentation last time. So I'll explain this. So years of ethnic conflict and religious disharmony. So Sri Lanka experienced 30 years of war, which was a conflict between the Sri Lankan Tamils and Sinhalese, Sri Lankan Sinhalese. So the Sri Lankan Sinhalese are the majority, consist of about 70% of the population, whereas Sri Lankan Tamils, Sri Lankan Muslims, Sri Lankan Burghers, and there are different other ethnicities that lives in this island. And the north part was occupied by Sri Lankan Tamils. And with the several structural issues that led to an ethnic conflict, which later turned into an armed struggle, happened in Sri Lanka for last 30 years. So it ended in 2009 by the Sri Lankan military completely defeating the armed terrorist group. But the problem with that is there has been several accusations of war crimes, and there have been instances where there are claims of genocide, where the unarmed people, civilians, were killed in large numbers. So when we talk about justice, when we talk about climate crisis, and when we talk about justice and equity, there are hundred thousands of people who are waiting for answers. So these 30 years of war and the crimes associated with these needs to be addressed. And there are people fighting for it, and even the UNHRC, Human Rights Council, this time these issues were raised up, but there haven't been any answers. So fast forward to 2019, the top picture that with the images of the graves. So that is from the Easter attacks. The previous slide still, let's say. So that is from Easter attacks, whereas there were several bomb blasts across the island on the Easter Sunday. Some at churches, some were at hotels, and this happened in 2019, soon before a change in the political power. And Now there are accusations that these crimes, these were setups and these were planned for power. So while these accusations are there are still, the justice has still not been served. There hasn't been clear, transparent investigations, and people who were brought in before the law, especially the people who would have given the commands and understanding the basics of it. So, and the last two pictures in the same slide, where there are two women. Actually, one photo on the right was taken by me, and the other one was sent to me by a friend who lives close by to a tea estate. So you probably know that Sri Lanka is quite popular for the brand Ceylon tea. Though the laborers who do the hard work for this brand to be a world-class brand uh, are actually they're below the poverty line. They live quite horrible lives, and they have been brought to Sri Lanka 200 years ago, while during the time that Sri Lanka was a British colony. Earlier, there were coffee estates, but because of a disease, it didn't work out. So after that, the colonizers started growing tea. So when they understood that it is cheaper to bring in labor from elsewhere, they ended up bringing quite large number of people from India to Sri Lanka, who then ended up working at tea estates. So the problem with this is that most of these people still don't have lands. They still live inside the estates. They have very small houses, which are called line houses. The second picture is inside one of those houses. And they live sometimes inside gated communities, so they don't have the freedom to move as they please. And it's also difficult for them to access the services offered by the state, as an example, because they don't have an address. And I've heard stories from the people who, especially children, sometimes when they've been selected for the university, they don't receive the letter on time because they don't have the address, and the letter goes to the estate managers. So this is a large issue, and this has been there for 200 years. So why I wanted to address this is that though we talk about justice, when we can clearly see examples of communities that have been marginalized and that have been systemically marginalized to maintain an industry for 200 years, when we talk about climate justice, we need to understand that these issues need to be solved first as well. And that when we talk about climate justice and when we talk about other issues, these are the communities, these are the people who face their issues, who face issues in the first hand, or are the first responders to the issues. And the other reason is that with the climate emergency, I completely understand that we need to, move to sustainable systems, and that this transition needs to be quick and it needs to be done urgently. But looking at how issues have been solved in my country before, it is quite clear that we tend to keep issues away without really solving them. And by doing that, we contribute to maintaining the status quo as it is. Understanding that a community has been disadvantaged for 200 years is a good example for that, because every time that the issues were brought up, it was always said that this is not the time. We need to make sure that the brand, this brand is such a valuable brand to Sri Lanka, and we need to maintain that. And right now we are talking about economic stability, and when we talk about economic stability, we say even environment is not a priority right now, and ethnic issues definitely not, right? So with this, without having this multi bird's eye approach, I think it's going to be difficult when achieving climate justice. So with all of these issues that has happened in Sri Lanka, on 9th July in 2022, there was a mass uprising. Nancy, if you can please move down to the next slide. Yeah. So this is an image from 9th July in 2022, because due to the economic crisis and the fuel crisis mainly, there was days without fuel and electricity and gas for days. So there was one day that there was no electricity for 13 hours. So especially the middle class stepped out. And then it went on for 4 months as an Occupy movement, which I was part of as well. And then with that, there was a mass uprising of people who came out to the streets and who went on to occupy government buildings. So these were the presidential secretariat, the president's president's palace, and the prime minister's residence. So all three of these places were occupied by the general public, just random people, which forced the Sri Lanka to go. So with this uprising, there was this very clear demand for accountability, very clear demand for transparency from people. And but what happened after was, even though people occupied, that there was no plan or there was no a method for people to take power, right? And also people were refusing all of the political parties because they didn't trust anybody. So which led to people, all of us, to wait and wait until the parliament made a decision on who would become the next president. And there were, people were refusing the likes of leaders, especially the leaders from the older generation. The previous president we had was also over 70. And what the parliament did was they went and voted in for a president who has been always rejected by the people. This is somebody who has, I think, close to 60 years of a political career, even though he was the main opposition leader for several years. He could never win the presidency because people didn't really like him. So through the parliament, he was elected as the president, and he is the current president of Sri Lanka. And he supports he supports free market. That is sort of his dream and ideology that he was always building up on. So he continues to push Sri Lanka towards more neoliberal economic policies that includes privatization of the education, privatization of healthcare. So Sri Lanka has had quite amazing, even though there's structural issues, its literacy rate is 93%, if I'm not mistaken, and that has been maintained for quite a long time as well. So with what's happening now with the economic policies is one, privatization of state-owned enterprises and businesses, including education and health, like I said, and also there is the debt restructuring process that Sri Lanka is going through currently with the IMF. IMF team is currently in Sri Lanka as well, and with the debt restructuring, they're putting the majority of the burden on the working class, on the EPF holders. So these are things that has been really pressing at the moment. In addition to some of the decisions that the Sri Lankan government has taken recently, we recently signed an agreement with Singapore on for carbon swaps, and there are a lot of talks about debt for nature swaps, but the whole discussions and the agreements are quite hush-hush. So there hasn't been any publicly available information for us to understand whether Sri Lanka is really going to go ahead with debt for nature swaps. If so, what are the clauses? What are the conditions? So even the IMF agreement used to be, it was the same. Even for people to reject or refuse, there wasn't any information available. So without information, people didn't know what they're being signed up for. So it still goes on. This goes on to, because some of the information, the information they share is only in English. That's one issue. And it's also quite concise. I mean, there's no proper explanation in a way that people would understand. Yes, Robert. So I completely agree. And also another thing is, like, right now, last week actually, Sri Lankan government brought in two bills. One is the Anti-Terrorism Act. We had a Counter-Terrorism Act before, but there was a lot of pressure from the international community to take that out, because even after the uprising, they arrested student leaders and detained them under Anti-Terrorism Act for months. They kept them inside for months, but in front of the public pressure, they had to release them without even charges. But there's nothing, that's been happening against that. Even the fundamental rights petitions followed by some of those students were not given leave to proceed. So the Anti-Terrorism Act is one of the new bills that is being brought in to repress the voices of the people. And the other one is the Online Safety Bill. So with the Anti-Terrorism Bill, they have very vaguely defined what terrorism is, and even that is not in accordance with the internationally accepted definition. And they also talk about things like terrorist publications, for instance. And according to the Online Safety Bill, if I post something which makes you angry and you would want to riot or you want to protest, I could be put in jail for that. So, and they're also, they're going to start, according to the bill, the president will appoint 5-people committee, 5-people committee to determine the truth. So this is kind of like, George Orwell's Ministry of Truth, where there will be 5 people appointed by the president who will determine what is true and what is not. And if they decide that what you post online is not true, they could put you in jail. So social media played a huge role in last year's uprising as well. So both of these could be, in one way, repress people to make sure that there will never be another uprising. And number 2, it could also be in support of the IMF conditions, as they are quite hard hitting on the common people to keep people down. Yes, there's another slide, but that is just the last slide. Nancy, if you could go down. Yeah. So I have added a quote from UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet from last year, that what is happening, I mean, in terms of the misuse of law to protect the people in power, that has been happening throughout, throughout the history. And last year, because there were so many people who stood against the authorities, it was somewhat controlled, or we didn't see this repression as much because there was such a big number of people. But now even a woman that walk alone on the road, hanging, not even holding, even, hanging a poster around her neck, even she was arrested early March this year. She was asking justice for being attacked during a protest last year. So that is the gist of what is happening in Sri Lanka at the moment in terms of human rights and freedom of expression at the moment.
Thank you so much, Melanie. And it was really insightful to have this information. And I can totally connect with you what's happening in Sri Lanka, exactly in similar happening in India by various means, various modes in various geographies. So Um, I would request you, Melanie, just take this conversation forward. What's your plans regarding to fighting these challenges uh, uh, with whatever you have at this moment? Because I, Robert, Getry, Nancy, David, all are like working as warriors, and wherever currently we are working, we try to bring equitable justice to what we call it as a social justice, whether it is in terms of climate crisis or it is health, education, livelihood, or any other sector that we can bring to the downtrodden communities, those who are most affected because of these challenges. And we really would like to listen from you, uh, like what would be the best uh, strategies or best thing to do in Sri Lanka, and let's take this conversation forward. Over to you, Melanie.
Yeah, thanks, Rahul. Um, so in terms of excuse me, in terms of what I'm doing right now is because my focus all of these years used to be mainly on the only on the environmental issues, but now since I've been exposed to more issues regarding minorities and also human rights and equality, I try to understand the links between these, and I also try to act as a link between different activist groups, because before last year I actually had a lot of contacts with environmental and climate groups, mostly environmental conservation groups, I would say, because in Sri Lanka there are a lot of groups who focus on conservation, though they don't really understand a lot about justice side. So I'm trying to sort of be a link between the human rights groups and the environment rights groups, which is a bit difficult, but I think it's really necessary because we are all fighting the same enemy. Yeah, so yeah, that's one of the things that I'm working on right now. So I'm really trying to find this link, and also I work with deaf justice groups in Sri Lanka. So mainly understanding how the IMF conditions are implemented in Sri Lanka, and trying to question them and both the government and the IMF on transparency. Uh, because they've been doing like quite good campaigning on sort of telling people of Sri Lanka that this is the only resort. Your leaders are so bad, they are never going to make right decisions for you. So the only solution you have is the IMF. So that's kind of the picture that they've painted here. So we're trying to sort of uh, swim upstream, which is not very easy because we don't have loads of people to support, but I think it's still worth it. Yeah, Rahul, you can take the mic.
So, and more interestingly, that is my personal question. I would really interested in data and research kind of thing, that whatever happening across the world, like data is getting manipulated when it is going to be published. Even if it is in, when I was in UNICEF, I noticed that when I read World Bank report or WHO report, there is something that they adjust not to go in that manner, so that they will be in a position of suspicion. And when I ask these questions to my higher authorities, they also try to focus. They might called it as positive change, but what positivity they are bringing, without not considering the marginalized community or downtrodden communities or minorities, because they are the ones who are suffering in the extent position. So my question is, when you come across these kind of terminologies in respective of data or any evidence based, did you get any threats from your government or something, like when you speak up in a public and all?
Uh, yeah, so basically, threats, I would say, I mean, so far I've been arrested twice during protests, and both were peaceful protests. And, I just had like a signboard in my hand, both instances. And I think that because and holding me back, because both of these cases are criminal cases, which means that it's not directly somebody telling me that they would harm me, but I'm on trial for a criminal case. So that's when I try to get other work done, or sometimes apply for a job, they became a problem. And apart from that, sometimes when I talk about elephants that are being paraded, the captive elephants, when I speak against it, there are quite a lot of threats I receive through social media, because it's something that people unfortunately connect with their culture, even though I very strongly believe that it needs to change, because elephants in Sri Lanka is a highly threatened species, and they're a keystone species who should be in the wild. Uh, so those are the type of threats that you usually get, and this is and on top of it, I noticed that there are not really threats, but there are attempts of doing campaigns to tarnish this sort of your image, or to discredit you. So I have faced those things, and I think they are they're pretty much political, because when especially I think people like me, or citizens speak up, it becomes quite difficult for existing parties to carry out their usual politics. So, and that also goes because I have spoken against privatization of education and health, and that also tend to create a lot of enemies in Sri Lanka.
That's really wonderful, Melanie, because being an leader, being an voice keeper is not uh, so easy, because you are sometimes put your life in danger for the people. And sometimes that voice might heard, sometimes it is like getting ignored, but it has value, that we actually have value. People are watching us, whatever we are doing. And not only about the locality, but from the universal perspective. And equatorial voices is also one kind of platform that we raises issue that matters to the local communities, that people who are really impacted. And we're really glad to have you on board. And now I would like to request all our members to please add value to this most important conversation that we are holding. And whatever what you heard about Sri Lanka, and if you have any um, concerns about it, you can go. So I would request David. David is raising hand. Yes, David, please go ahead.
So I wanted to know more about the food situation in Sri Lanka. I mean, I know there's been a huge spike in hunger and food insecurity. Is most of the food imported? Is most of the land being used for export crops? I mean, what are people existing on? Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the question, Robert. So I think in terms of food security, I think Sri Lanka's food security started falling soon after the previous president took a decision to switch to organic farming overnight. So the problem with the whole process was there wasn't enough time. Instantly, they stopped bringing in chemical fertilizer, and people were not given fertilizer from then onwards. So this created a big issue among farmers, and that is still ongoing. Personally, I have been an advocate for using less chemicals on food and for organic farming as well. But the way that it was done was not at all healthy, and I think that is a very good example on what could happen, what could result when the transitions are not just when they haven't done grassroots consultations with the farmers itself, when farmers were not there where the decisions have been made. So along with that, with the economic crisis last year and also the cost of living skyrocketing this year as well, I think about 70% people, if I'm not mistaken, according to, not 70%, sorry, about 30% of the people were considered as food insecure in Sri Lanka, according to UNDP. The main issues lie that last year there were lines of people everywhere. There were people lined up to buy gas, buy fuel, and various things, but there was no products for people to buy. But now what has happened is there are products available in the market, but people don't have money to buy that. So you don't see them in queues anymore. And I read in an article that parents have had to choose which child to be sent to school, right? And a lot of people have reduced meals in their food, and the long time impact of this would actually be on the children, because if the children are not getting proper nourishment, and this is going to cause a large issue in the future when this population grows up. So I guess there hasn't been any proper disclosures or proper solution to address this. And another thing is that Sri Lanka has always had a history where we produced our food, and we were one of the best spice exporters in the world at one time, right? So in terms of traditional cultivation methods, in terms of land use management and especially water management, Sri Lanka has had this really sophisticated methods, I would say. But we have lost all the knowledge with the during the last couple of 100 years. And I mean, technically speaking, within this 65,000 square kilometers, we have 35,000 man-made reservoirs that could collect water, right? And they are not being used properly now. And there's renovations and constructions and development that they do on top of these structures, which are without really preserving or understanding how they should be used, and the development model that we are sort of have incorporated is not something that would actually benefit the Sri Lankan people, but rather to the other powerful nations who have interests in Sri Lanka. I hope that answered your question, Robert.
Okay, thank you, Melanie. That was David's question. When I heard you speaking, I was moved. I had someone from my tribe I love, human rights defending, and I really want to echo that it is hard to be a human rights defender and you fail to have concerns on environment and climate. So I hear you. So my question relates to an article I read, I think was it last year, where they were highlighting the high level of money laundering by government officials in Sri Lanka. And I think, was it put on a grey list or something like that? Has it affected the local man, or it doesn't affect the local man? This relates to a statement by one of our most popular opposition activists, who said that World Bank denying Uganda money doesn't affect the local man. So I just want to know, is there a linkage between Sri Lanka being put on the grey list of countries with the highest money laundering affecting the local person? Then the second question is, like a human rights activist or defender, it is draining, right? So do you have a support system around you? Because I've been through this. I know how draining it is personally. So I'll round up by, before you answer, I'll round up by reminding you what David always tells me, David Albert, that a human rights activist is as good as long as he keeps themselves alive. There is a way he states it. So back to you, Melanie. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you so much for the questions. So the first question that you asked, okay, I forgot the first question. So I'm going to go with the second question first, and then come back to the first one. So I think in terms of being tired and being sort of drained, that happens quite often. But I do have friends, but the problem is that because we are a very small number, and also a lot of people are scared of repression, a lot of people are scared to speak up, and also because there's like so many different communication propaganda to keep people distracted. We kind of have to keep working. So I do have a good support system. I do have my friends, but at the same time, it is quite draining. And I'm trying to figure things out and kind of like create a small balance. But it does feel like we are constantly reacting, not really being proactive. And it's quite hard because we are also not, I'm talking like all around the world also, that people are not really organized still. So even if I take the climate movement in Sri Lanka, we have one group working on leopards, and another group working on elephants, another group on the ocean, another group on the legal matters. So it's all scattered, unfortunately. So if we can all come together, the climate movement, the human rights movement, peace movement, so all of them can come together and understand which are the priorities and how we can strategize. I think that would really help. But I do try to spend time in nature, which helps me quite a lot. That has been sort of how I try to keep the balance. Robert, if you can please give me a hint about the first question you asked. I had it right here in my mind, but I forgot it.
Okay, thank you, Melanie. I'm glad you're having some people who are there to back you up. My first question was about the high rate of money laundering by government officials that is really associated to corruption. How has it affected the local person?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for the question. So basically, last year, when there was this, like a huge uprising asking for this president Rajapaksa to go home, it was not just him, because at that time there were 5 people with the same surname, with the same first family, who were in higher up positions in the government. Like, the president, the prime minister, and about three other people in the ministerial positions with a lot of power. So along with this, there were a lot of cases about money laundering. Sri Lanka, I mean, there was a couple related to then president whose names came up in the Panama Papers. But the problem is that within Sri Lanka, there is no internal audit that has been done to determine the details of these money laundering cases or the corruption. So with IMF, they were asked, one of the IMF conditions was for Sri Lankan government was to bring in an anti-corruption bill, which they did. But the problem with this anti-corruption bill is that it has a lot of loopholes. And regardless of how many bills that they bring in, if it is the same people who stole, same people who contributed to corruption that's in power, they're not going to really implement these laws. And with Transparency International and actually a report released on illegal capital flight. So this is the capital that has been sent out from Sri Lanka since 2009. The total value is in trillions of dollars, and it actually exceeds the external debt that Sri Lanka has as a country. So this is not only the politicians, but the private sector is also involved in this. So this is only on the goods that they have, through trade misinvoicing. So the amount that has been sent outside of the country is massive. And along with this, there's a lot of money laundering cases. There's a lot of corruption cases. That information is right out there in public, but there haven't been proper investigation through the legal system to prosecute them. And how that affects to people is, in one way, I would say that in a larger social sense, people have also adopted corruption or, like not being truthful as part of the society, unfortunately. And this mostly goes to, stealing from workplace, stealing, when you're doing, some sort of a transaction, you would increase the price, or there's like always somebody in the middleman, like taking commission. Those sort of things have become normalized. So, which is, I think, a larger social issue that would take quite a while to get rid of. But the problem is that when poor people are penalized for small acts of stealing, but the leaders who have stolen in billions and trillions are not paying for any consequences. So in terms of people not having money, in terms of people being poor, of course there's a link. When the capital of the country has been sent abroad illegally, definitely it's going to hit hard on the local entrepreneurs and small business holders. Yeah, hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Melani. Getri, your hand is up.
I'm glad, Melani, that we are discussing about this, and I just fall in love when I hear people talking about human rights and trying to fight for the rights of the grassroots people, because I started doing peace work, and it was all about, David might be aware of the program, and I think Nancy and some of us here, it was all about training on alternative to violence, issues about trauma, But as we will continue, as you said, it's hard to just focus on that because the problems people experience, environmental, economic crisis, it's just pouring back to the pain they're having. And so you have to talk about what is the government doing about it. Recently, I don't know if Leonida is aware, recently during the climate summit in Kenya, the African presidents who are there are kind of discussing to come up with a policy in various countries that they need to put taxation on people have planted eucalyptus trees. And this is just being discussed in a boardroom and nobody understands why the taxation has to happen. So I'm imagining the implementation, how the police will be used to force people to pay money without knowing. And you see, these are all again going to people's rights. And I'm really looking forward because I'm looking at Equatorial Voices. We want to be an action-oriented network, whereby we talk about the problems you're having in the world, but we also look at what is everybody doing to try find a solution. And if we can, from an activist perspective, if we can continue to share knowledge about our different approaches. I've done some kind of a high-level activism in my county when officials they're given very, very big positions as a political token instead of bringing competent people in the office. And it was not safe. It was more risky because you become an opponent and a threat to the politicians. But I'm glad that our voices were counted because they ended up changing things the way they weren't supposed to be doing them. And so how I wish as Equatorial Voices to bring you on board, Melani, to work with us. Let's try and see how we can start solving in small bits by giving ideas and learning from each other.
Thank you so much, Redri. It's very nice for you to share that info. And I completely agree that it's very difficult to not look at what is happening on the ground and to make the connections between all of these injustices. And like you said, I think we definitely need to be action oriented. And also, I think as climate activists, this is what I'm feeling, especially within my community, that we need to be more precise on our messaging. Because sometimes I see like a lot of awareness raising. We still try to convince people that climate crisis is real. And I think personally, this is a very personal opinion, and definitely please do say what you think of this. I think trying to convince people that this is really happening is not really a good way to utilize our time right now, because if they're not going to believe it, they'll just have to wait until it happens in front of their eyes. But in terms of focusing the discussion more towards climate justice, debt justice, and how financial crimes are linked with this, and also how the marginalized communities suffer because their voices don't get heard much, I think is the way to go and way to orient our actions, if possible. I'm happy to hear if anybody has any thoughts on that, please.
Yes, Leonida.
Yes, Leonida.
Good evening, everyone from my part of the world. I'd really connect with what Melani is saying, particularly in terms of the human rights violations that are happening in our country and criminalization of protest. We recently had a very bad experience in Kenya where people were protesting because of the rising cost of living, and particularly the rising cost of food, which kept rising. It's still rising to date, and people got protesters. We have a constitution allows us to protest, but when people protest, they were actually getting shot and over 30 people got killed in the process. And this sort of acted as a deterrence because people stopped protesting because families were getting their kin killed by the state. And so it's being a human rights defender, environmental defender is actually not easy. It's very risky. There are lots of issues that you have to, that come into your way. Perhaps I'm thinking that what the network can do, maybe also looking at, for example, in situations where people are facing risk, direct risk, maybe coming up with some sort of a solidarity fund so that in case someone may have to disappear for some time, because there's no photocopy for life, you know. Once you're killed, you're gone. Eh? So I think that will be something to think through, given the different spaces that we're working in. And of course, we need to be alive as the network members to the shrinking civic space happening in our communities. I can give an example of in Kenya, we had a training on discussion on shrinking civic space. The following day, there was a protest on cost of living, and like half of the participants who had attended the training that had organized got arrested, and they were not allowed. They were not allowed bail. You know, the police kept on delaying tactics for a long time, but eventually they got released. And it's quite unfortunate that even the former Chief Justice got tear gassed. You know. So it doesn't matter who you are or who you used to be, you know, got tear gas in a police station when he went to secure release for this activist. And maybe the other thing, maybe a tangible thing that we could do as a network, I'm thinking now COP28 is coming in Dubai. How about we start now documenting the different community experiences, and then we can even have a Twitter space exchange, because, for example, based on what we've been doing using Twitter, we get so many people coming into the space. They don't have to be people we already work with or we know, but they get to, you know, this conversation gets amplified. I can give an example of what we did during Africa Climate Week and Africa Climate Summit that was happening in Kenya. We had a few days to the summit. We had our own People's Summit online, you know, and we had over 80 people from different countries coming in to share their experiences, which to me was very powerful. So we also need to think about what alternatives can we bring in on board. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. And I think building solidarity in that way is definitely important. So I'll share one of the experiences that I had from last year when one of the main student leaders were arrested and detained under the Terrorist Act. There were lots of protests organized and we were trying to build solidarity. And at the end of it, we did this, we got people to sign affidavits. So basically, you know, you would state that, you know, with your official credentials, that people were saying that, like, you know, I was part of the uprising on this day. So if you're holding him under the Terrorist Act, you should be taking me as well. So we just did this in public places. And we actually didn't think many people would sign. But this is not on social media, actually, just randomly people who are going to work and, like, you know, returning from work, just would stop and sign on a stamp. And I thought that was really powerful and strong that people were going to, you know, went that far to defend another activist. So, I mean, I think within within few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, we connected like about 7,000 odd signatures, and there could have been more. So I think, like, you know, acts of solidarity and especially in the face of repression, showing that we stand with the same principles and we believe the same thing. And I think that can go a long way as well. Yeah, Thank you. Rahul?
Yeah. So, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I won't see Nancy. Nancy, are you there?
Yes, I'm right here, Rahul.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts, Nancy?
Well, I'm really moved by the vision of what this kind of networking can mean. First of all, just the voice of support, hearing each other, caring about each other, but the potential then of, as Leonida was speaking of, through social media and other ways, really expanding the connection. I'm thinking if Robert Corman were here, he would mention via Campesina 200 million members all over the world of farmers and fisher folk. I want us to keep exploring how can we connect, how can we create solidarity. The particular story that Melani just spoke of, that I was really moved by that idea that one person is imprisoned over a protest and all the others who were at the protest speak up and say, but I was there too, then arrest me. I'm feeling a real sense that there are some strategies, some tactics we can come up with for building that kind of solidarity across, within and across national borders, people to people, so that we're never just alone in one country or in one protest, but we're really paying attention to each other, to what the demands are for, to the things that are most critical. I like the idea of us somehow having a voice at COP28 as it is coming up. Thank you very, very much, Melani. I'm so glad that we have had a chance to hear you, and in particular hear in more depth your own actions and be inspired by how we can help each other with them.
Thank you, Nancy. Any other? John, Anna, Arman, please go ahead if you have any thoughts.
Anna's got her hand up, and then I'll go. Anna, you're muted.
Yes, John, please go ahead.
Yes, I would like to say how pleased I think David Bohm would be. This all started with introducing his ideas of dialogue to a group of people. He was very keen that people talk together, listen to each other, and find community that way. As I see it, listening to what I've heard today, it just adds to what I think we're in an increasingly authoritarian mood in the world. And I think anything we can do to join in community and raise our voices and work together is really important. So thank you, Melani. I should say I was in Sri Lanka many years ago. Can't remember exactly which year. It was the year after the tsunami. I was there with my family, traveling around, mainly in the south. We went as far east as Yala. We were sort of initially based, forget the name, Gaul, I think, in the east, southeast. And then we traveled up to the tea country, to Colombo, somewhere else along the way. And my family were more athletic and climbed up great rocks and things. And I stayed with the grandchildren, who were quite small. But we had the most wonderful time, and people were very welcoming and kind.
Yeah.
It was a holiday I won't forget. So it's very nice to be with you now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. I think that the year was probably 2004 or 2005. The tsunami happened in 2003.
Mm. So 2004, I was there. Gosh, that's nearly 20 years ago.
Wow.
And my little boys are now in their 20s.
Wow.
One thing, though, that, you know, reading your report that really worries me, it's the conflict between people and animals. And I'm sure that's because of land shortages and encroachments. And I do feel part of our responsibility in recognizing the ravages of climate change is also recognizing that we share our land and our earth with other species and somehow trying to make room for them.
Yeah. So this is like my personal experience because my grandparents are from the rural East. So they have paddy farms, and when they cultivate, they used to leave one block of the cultivation for the elephant, right? I mean, my grandpa would just say, oh, leave that for the elephant,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
They had this sort of, you know, an unspoken bond between the two. But now with this rapid development that happened after the war ended in 2009, there has been lots of land that has been cleared. And this include the elephant corridors as well, right? And actually farmers would farm in like, say, 2 to 3 acres of land. But when it comes to the local and international, these like big companies, they clear hundreds of acres at once, and or else they put electric fences with high voltage around their land. So when the elephant goes and hits it, it gets angry because, you know, it's quite painful, and then he runs and ends up, you know, destroying the first house it sees, which usually belongs to a poor farmer, right? Or I mean, this is the main issue because these land grabbers, they would make sure that their lands are safe by using high voltage electric fences, and the poor farmers don't have access to that. And sometimes, I mean, there are quite a lot of elephant deaths because of electrocution as well. And but if you go and speak to the people in the rural villages, the local farmers, they love animals. Like they understand that the elephant comes to their farm because it has nowhere else to go, because it doesn't have food in the forest, because its forest has shrunk. So the farmer understands this and they are sympathetic. But the common narrative is, I mean, we even call it human elephant conflict, right? But there's actually the conflict between the natural world, which includes humans, and this so-called development or the growth development. And when we don't see it, when we actually call it human elephant conflict and try to sort of separate the two, I think that that's one way that we are mixing the problem up. Even at the government level, they're trying to address this human wildlife conflict without really understanding what is causing the conflict.
Well, I can see it's a big
David,
problem.
I think you, sorry,
Go on, Nancy.
I was just noting that David's hand is up, and then John said, don't remember the order.
Let John go first.
Okay, I thank you, David, and thank you, Raul and Katrina and Robert for organizing this. Melani, I'm and from the Climate Dialogue Group, which is kind of has a parental relationship in a sense to the Equatorial Voices, in the sense that we had the benefit of them coming together in a platform that we began a couple of years ago. And so in the effort of recognizing the voices that need to be heard, and that those who need to hear those voices, and the equatorial voices are ones that clearly needed to be heard. Our good friend David Albert introduced us to many that are on this call, and we've had the great benefit of hearing from them, very much like you, what's been going on in the countries. And it's been moving and galvanizing for those of us in the, if you will, in the northern, the global north, to understand the depth of the challenge in detail and the daily struggle. I am particularly moved by you, Melani, as a young woman who is showing such courage in what you're doing in Sri Lanka against so many odds, and having been arrested twice and having that on your record to make it difficult for you to get employment, and hearing the challenge also of your friends. So from the Climate Dialogue Group, hearing this interchange, and to Nancy's point also, I think the thing that also gives us such great, that is so moving, is to hear the interaction amongst this network, and to hear Getry's points of how we move together to find actionable steps, things that we learn from each other that we can use in our own localities. I'm speaking from a very resourced area, and so it's often hard just to even understand, though I've spent time in Kenya and in those difficult areas. But it's so this is very nourishing and very rich for me. And as part of the Climate Dialogue Group, I am committed to how do we continue to provide the framework for these voices to be heard, and how to understand what that network, the power of the network, can be. I'm just so appreciative, Melani, of both the time before. I wasn't able to stay on the entire call before, but this one, and I'm so impressed with you personally as a leader, your strength, your courage, your determination, your spirit. So thank you. We stay strong, and you see with your compatriots here in these other countries, from India, Uganda, Kenya, Congo. We haven't heard from Herman, but I mean, these are, and Leonida, these are strong leaders. And we are, I mean, from our organization, the Climate Dialogue Group, we are part and parcel of the same effort and movement. We are with you. We are in solidarity with you. And so to the extent that we can move, I'm sorry for going on so long, but that's the one piece. I'm unable to type as I have a wounded wing, and unable to get there. But thank you again so much for this time, David.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Melani. And whenever you speak, I'm remembering my time in Sri Lanka. It was in 1982. It's a long time ago. But I want to tell you, and first of all, as I look around the world and I talk to people, and of course my network is very large, it's becoming more and more clear that the emperor has no clothes. That's a story. The emperor has no clothes. The World Bank and the IMF are a sham. Sustainable development is neither sustainable nor development. We need to stop using those words and just talk about people and what it is that people need, what people desire, what people can do together with themselves, for their communities, with each other. And I want to tell a very brief story. I have been known to be long-winded. I can make a long story even longer. But a short story, my wife and I were up in northern Sri Lanka in January of 1982, the month before the major violent struggle began. I have had friends who have jokingly said that I was the one that caused it. And there's a tiny, tiny, tiny little piece of truth in that. My wife and I were asked to do a communications workshop with very rural women north of Chavakcherry, close to the coast. And it was all women with the exception of these three men. They were tigers, but tigers to us, they were all friends of ours. And so we had asked the women to get together in their groups and discuss for almost an hour what were the key problems in their community. And after an hour, they came back. They chose a spokeswoman, and two groups. And both times, the women got up and said, "Well, our biggest problem is lack of water, and our well doesn't go deep enough." Now, I wasn't going to talk about wells, but it was sort of interesting. They both identified this problem. And the men stood up and started to lambast them. That's not our biggest problem. That's not the problem in Sri Lanka today. The problem is the Tamils. We don't have government jobs. We're denied places in the universities. We have no banking facilities so that we can make loans for big businesses. Our farms are too small. They went on. And my wife, who's a very strong woman, got up and stopped them and said, "Well, we've now heard from the women, and now we've heard from you. So let's send the women back, now that they've heard you, to discuss what's really wrong in, what are your biggest problems in the community." And they went back together for 45 minutes, and they reported out again, "No, our biggest problem is that the well isn't deep enough." The reason people blame my wife and I for the violent conflict is that it became clear to these three guys, one of whom was actually a fairly substantial leader of the Tigers, thought that they were losing the support of their own people. Because the problems that they had locally were intensely local, were intensely an environmental problem. This is now, of course, the population of Sri Lanka is today 3 times it was when I was there in 1982. And I still have a few friends up in Jaffna. But the point being is that if you uncover things, again, you find this whole story of the emperor has no clothes. You find sustainable development is neither sustainable nor development. And that a really good place to start is listening. It's one of the reasons I appreciate Burma and other forms of dialogue, in that we get to listen to each other well, and we go out and listen to the people, and we get beyond the rhetoric, and we get beyond the newspaper, we get beyond me, and just listen to what it is that people are really telling us about their lives. Thank you so much, Melani.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. Just to add a small thing to that. So after the last year's uprising, some people wanted to ask for an election, but there were some who wanted to support these. We started calling it People's Councils because that sounded like the only name that people could agree with. But the whole idea was creating these dialogues among people, bringing in different voices and sort of practicing how to listen. I don't think we are very successful yet, because it's still sort of the people who like the idea who joins it. But we need to grow to a place where we can listen to different ideas and people who disagree, and still being okay with it. And I think that's one of the main problems we see in Sri Lanka as well, like lots of conflicting ideas, and we end up always wanting to convince the other person to see things my way than actually understanding how the other person sees it, or the understanding or empathizing with the other person's experience. So I think in the longer term, I mean, last time when I was asked by Rahul and Nancy, how do I think that the global north can help? I actually said that if we can, create a pathway or create tools and create systems for better dialogues, how to listen and how to have non-violent communication. And so I think that would really, really be useful going forward all around the world. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Melanie, and all our other members that they shared their insights. And definitely, we are actually expanding and exploring the ways that we can connect timely and share our insights, what resources that we have each other. Like even every member present here have special talent, special experience, what they were doing in their own field, own pace, own geographies, and that could be the great help that we can do with each other. Now I request Robert to please wrap up this session and share the next plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. And thank you, Rahul, for coordinating this. It has been a very, very rich discussion. And honestly, it has given us a picture of what you are going through. And I would love to encourage you to keep fighting. Human rights are not optional. They are demanded for, and we must earn them. But also, I would love to encourage you that you need a strong support system. And also, you need to be cautious with your life. Life is precious. Okay? So thank you so much, Melanie, for that. Thank you, colleagues, all of us who have been able to make it today. It has been a rich discussion, and we hope to build on this. Thank you for reaching out to us and coming through. In a few days, we shall be communicating our next step as EVN. And I would love to request Melanie and Leonida to stay on after we've closed this dialogue. Thank you, members. All the best. Have a beautiful day. Have a good night, all of you in the evenings of your days. Thank you, Black. Thank you, Anna, David, John, Haman, and others for coming through. Leonida and Melanie, please stay behind.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Anna.
Lovely to be with you.
All right. Blessed day.
Robert, am I staying behind?
Yeah.
Okay, now the fun begins. We're going to party down. Get out the drinks.
Yeah.
Beautiful job, Melanie. Well, really, really excellent. And Rahul, you guys did a really great job.
Thank you, Nancy.
Oh, Robert, you missed Leonida.
She has dropped out.
Yep.
She was supposed to stay behind.
Mm.
Can someone, Betri, can you reach out to her briefly? We understand it is late for one.
Let me see if I can grab my phone.
Okay. Let's hold on a bit, colleagues.
Someone else is sneaking in here.
Could be her.
Here is Ray, my husband, Melani's man, and I can't recall if you have Benita. He
Ray.
listened the whole time.
Hello. Hello, Melani.
Hi.
Oh, that's not IE, it's just I.
Okay.
One little thing I would like to say, the effort to collect solutions, many of the solutions we are collecting are physical solutions, solutions to energy or fuel or water or food, how to handle those kinds of survival issues. But the other kind, and I'm mentioning it to you, Melani, looking for the social solutions, the political actions that can work, that can, if we come together in solidarity, what do we do with that? When do we come together? What are we trying to accomplish? How do we support each other? So I want to say again, a highlight for me today was this, just the idea of providing solidarity by people coming together after the protest, when your friend had been arrested, and saying, arrest us too. That seems a tactic that could spread, that could be in our toolkit of ways we can support each other, that has potential for real power behind it.
I agree. Actually, when that incident happened, I wrote to some of the international journalists, seeing whether they could highlight that story, because I don't know whether that has happened anywhere else in the world. Because that was like, lawyers went into the court with like these massive piles of paper. And it was really touching when this like random people, especially the older generation, they would come and say, he's like our son. He fought for us. He was fighting for our rights. And we are not going to let him be alone. So those things were really powerful. But I don't know. And at that time, I think that was kind of the height of the war in like the Russian and Ukraine war. So it didn't really get a lot of attention. But I think overall, like if, through storytelling, these things could be, I mean, these were all tools. I mean, sometimes we only know what we can do best when we don't have any other options also.
Yes, exactly. We use a hammer when we need a screwdriver because we only have a hammer. Perhaps you have already written that up. If you have, we could put it together. If it has not yet been written up, write it and then just get it to as many different outlets as we can, even if it's not the high level news, if it's people to people, social media and these kinds of meetings. And they weren't here this time because I just couldn't, I went beyond my bandwidth, could not reach out to the Deep Transformation Network, who we invited last time, but we can put things in their networks and many others. There are thousands that we can reach just that way with the story. So if the story is written, good. If it isn't, we could work together and tell that story again and again.
Yeah. I'm happy to do that. I haven't written it anywhere yet. And for some reason, I've been really bad with writing.
It takes support. It takes more than one person. You need, I can speak from experience. We need to help each other get things written. So that's one of the ways that our network, we can help our little network, we can help each other.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And Getri, I love the idea that you're talking about, like, about building solidarity and how we can, how we need to be action oriented. And I understand a lot of things that's happening in Kenya, Uganda, India, Sri Lanka. Like, it's the same model that's been sort of, replicated everywhere. And we're all seeing the repercussions now, isn't it?
It's actually not an easy shoe to walk in, I would say. We were having a conversation with Nancy, and then I remembered that sometimes I find myself falling in danger. I'll only realize that it's danger when I'm already there and I have no options of coming out. So you got to do what you got to do in a way you got to do. And I think that's why I felt really interested when Robert asked, how do you take care of yourself? Because by the end of the day, we are working on a lot of risks. We become enemies of good events. And sometimes it's fate, but somehow we go through it. I don't know how, but we successfully get somewhere. And those steps for me mean a lot. It counts a lot, whether I'm recognized or not, but just the few steps makes a very big meaning to my life. So I think it's just a connection of, even when Leonidas talking about making sure that we have some kind of a social support system and all these. Sometimes you even ask for legal framework, but sometimes you realize that that might even be your deathbed when you talk about legal framework. Sneaking into issues also makes it even easier. But then I don't say it's safe. So Robert, don't think it's safe. You're a human rights activist. But if you sneak in, it makes it easier to solve the scenario, because then you're not followed up with some kind of power that will intimidate. But again, we have to remember it's not safe, as we should always assume. So a falling back, like somebody to call, somebody to talk to, and just how do we project our voices when you're not safe, it's very important.
True. Completely agree. And like sneaking into the legal framework, I mean, I've tried all sort of things, in the sense filing human rights petitions, fundamental rights petitions, petitioning against the bills the government brought in, a Rehabilitation Act bill last year, to rehabilitate the protesters and the activists. So we've been trying, but the problem is that they have the 2/3 majority in the parliament. So they can't just get anything passed. Like, so that's been the major issue lately. And people are scared, rightly so. I mean, our country has seen so much violence. Like, there was an uprising in 1971. A lot of people died and were killed. And again in 88 and 89. And then after that, there was this 30 years of war. So people are scared. I get it. But yeah, we got to keep going though. And I always think that there are people who face more risks than me, but that doesn't reduce any risk. But yeah, we got to do what we got to do.
Well, among the things that I value about this group is, in addition to its deep commitment to the environment, human rights issues, the deep courage that each of you have displayed in your various contexts, your willingness to reach out beyond your own personal communities and to reach out to people not only in other nations, but even across, global south, global north divides. You have amongst all of you a deep insight into how interconnected all of these systems are. And that's both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in the sense that it gives us more insight about how things really work, and it's a curse in the sense that it's easy to become overwhelmed by it, because we think if we start to act on one piece of it, how will it have any effect, because the rest of it will just swamp us over and we'll be defeated. But it is all connected, and somehow it is our spirits that somehow we have to connect with all of it. And so my own area of work, which has been primarily law in the past, and of recent years, sort of trying to get a sense of these larger systems and particularly political systems. So I do a lot of kibitzing with Nancy. She's the brains, and I'm sort of the nitpicker. But I just want to mention one other piece of the system that's arising right now in the United States that relates to the global South, even though it doesn't seem to. This week, there was an indictment in the United States of Senator Menendez, a very corrupt and leading Democratic Party official, whose leadership has been key to the Biden administration. But he's very corrupt. He's already been in one trial, but he was acquitted. And okay, so he's acquitted. We have to let that go. Now he's being indicted on some new charges. Senator Menendez is head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He has a major role in what kind of foreign policy the United States adopts, and particularly what is the foreign policy of liberal democratic administrations. Supposedly, in our bipartisan sense, the United States at its best. But Menendez, in his position of leadership, makes sure that our American best incorporates much of our corrupt worst. And so he has exercised leadership for corrupt briberies and keeping American support for the autocracy in Egypt. So, and there was for a while during the Arab Spring, when the old regime in Egypt was overthrown, and then the revolution was co-opted by the military, and now under al-Sisi, it has been restored, and we have this autocracy, this horrible autocracy in Egypt, persecution of many, many, many brave people in Egypt. And so I care about those Egyptians, and among the reasons I care about those Egyptians is because a particular Egyptian who is a Muslim Brotherhood, a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, was also a teacher of Arabic in China, and was also in my wife's hospital room when she was struggling for her life.
In China.
In China. So I care about him and his movement as well. And then that spills over because as part of this larger system, the autocracy in Egypt, wanting to make sure that democracy would not arise in neighboring Sudan, is a major support now of the major civil war, the genocidal civil war that is going on in Sudan, and that is ruining and creating such huge immigration problems. And so that, and they're then from Sudan going to be going into Kenya and elsewhere as desperate people trying to escape the hell of Sudan, which relates to the autocracy in Egypt, which relates back to the corruption in the United States government, so that our best government shows its worst side to the people of the global South. I don't mean to just get off on the intellectual tie-ins, but it's all connected. And it's terribly, terribly important that we not allow ourselves to become overwhelmed, but just allow ourselves to clasp our hands and our hearts in solidarity and say, we don't know how much effect we will have. We will just lovingly and caringly and as intelligently as we can do the best by each other, do the best by the many peoples of the world as best we can, and just do what we can. And that brings out our best. I have a slogan that I like to use. Hope is not a prediction about the future. Hope is an investment we make in the future in order to make ourselves better in the present. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ray. You've given us strong and moving words in relation to the work that Melani does, and which is similar to what I get here and Raul do. So I will really understand our colleagues Melani and Rahul. They are exhausted. It is going to midnight in their time zone, right? So the last session, I would love to officially invite Melani to EVN team. As per our strategy, we are setting up committees on which we feel Melani, you would be a very, very strong person or a strong member, and your wisdom and knowledge would really impact our work as EVN. And we call upon you to join us. I know you might be having a lot of work, just like other people, but we would love to officially invite you into our team, and we shall discuss more about the most convenient committee you could serve on, so that we collectively impact the world. Like what Gertrude had earlier said during the dialogue, is that for us, we are action oriented. We know how urgent this is. So we also encourage you to mobilize more of your team in Sri Lanka to come on board, and we see that we have a world network that is focusing on responding to climate crisis. So for purposes of time, we would love to hear from you whether you are willing to be part of us, as we can discuss more with emails and other meetings.
I think,
Thank
Robert.
you. Back to you, Melani.
Robert, before
Yes.
Before Melanie comes in, I just want to, I think Melanie, you know about Equatorial Voices Network. We are a team of volunteers who want to see if we can make our world a better place. We work like the three coordinators. We work not certain of tomorrow, but we give the best today so that it can give us a fruitful tomorrow. And one of the key things that we have been struggling, it's looking at working with like-minded people. People are committed to see change because we are not yet in a place where we can say we can support financially, but we're in a place where we say, if your ideas and my ideas can come together, let's see what we can get. So, because I know it will entail putting Sri Lanka into a system of EVN and getting people connected, and that people might say we need to be paid to attend or do something like just, I think there's a problem in Africa. I don't know about Sri Lanka. But we keep saying this is an open space where people share their thinking, people share knowledge to make our world a better place. We don't know about tomorrow. Our gearing is to look at how can we get sources of funding to support groups. But we do not have that channel right now because we're just forming our website. But you're one of the people that, us as coordinators, we felt if we get you, it's a strong backbone to make this movement a success. And so I just feel happy to get sisters on board because I've been the only woman, and Nancy,
I beg your pardon.
So we need to be more to make these boys, these men.
There is gender imbalance.
No, women can do something.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay, Robert,
Thank you
I'm
again.
finished.
Both of you. And yes, I mean, I'm honored to be invited to be part of the event team and the network. But I do have to say that time management has been quite a challenge, given that I think since last year that we ended up connecting lots of different groups, lot of local groups. And since I've been sort of recognized from the protests and all of it, so I sometimes end up being the focal point of contact for a lot of things that I haven't signed up for. But I think I'm good at coordinations, and also we have lots of people still, having to go through court cases and these legal battles. So I sort of dedicate a lot of time to work on that as well. So I want to have that said, because and also with the current situation in Sri Lanka, sometimes randomly people get arrested and we have to run and run to the police station, find out lawyers, make sure that they get bailed. So and it has been a small team who's been doing this work, even though we are not really organized under one name or a one banner or anything. So I just wanted to have like that shared, because I'll try to make myself available whenever possible. And if we know how the time that your requirement is, like, how many hours that you think that I would need to work with EVN per week, then it would be easier for me to schedule that in.
If I could add, Melani, the first words in the invitation are time permitting. With that, when you have the time you can spare, each of the people are spread very thin, not as thin as you are, but it is a stretch. So trying very hard to be very precise and focused on time commitments, what is being asked, and which things are the things that you in particular are the best person to do. Not just something any of us could do as volunteers, but the thing that is the best match for what is fulfilling to you, your talents, where it's your best used. We will be very conscientious about that. I have a request. I think it's in that category, and it's as you're sleeping or not sleeping or moving around, for us to think strategically. I'm going back to your talk. The question I keep struggling with, the people who are in, not just in power, but in a pivotal leverage point of power for a particular systems thing that is needed right then. What power do we have over them, over that point? What kind of organized activity could put pressure on them? Because no one is perfectly powerful. They always have some vulnerable side. So I'm putting it out as homework for all of us to be thinking strategically, as big as they seem on the outside, what are ways that if we are quietly organized and we are connecting within and across our different countries, our different issues, our different movements, our different generations, we have some power there that we can we're under the radar, we're not being noticed, that we can identify the place where we could put the most effective effort. And I trust your insight. It's one of the things I so value in inviting you to be part of our thinking, is how you think about these things.
Thanks, Nancy. That is very clear, and I'm happy to volunteer and support with my time as things slow down, which I hope would be soon. But yeah, thank you so much, and I'm happy to
And I
accept
will
this.
say for myself, I have lots and lots of experience with writing and helping writing and supporting and encouraging it. So if I can be of help to you or the others, I would particularly like to do that, because amplifying your voices, that's why it is Equatorial Voices, to amplify the voices. That's what I most want to help.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Nancy. Rahul want to say something, no?
Thank you, Getri, Robert, Nancy, Melanie. I just want to say, whatever problems we are facing here, like Robert already, Getri already said, like, and Melanie, you also mentioned that team management is not like easy. I can totally relate with you. I have my own team in India for EVN, around 12, 15 members I can count on, but no one is active just because the time zone, or you can say some people are expecting uh, financial help or something like. But trust me, when we started, we are on a plate with the zero food. But now we have our own website. People are coming, people are contributing. We are no in rush or like in a very fast. We slowly, steadily moving on. We had someone from Pakistan. Now we are moving towards Afghanistan, and we are creating a loop of leaders. And we found one of in you from Sri Lanka. Actually, I don't know I shared or not, but uh, after 2 or 3 months of struggle, I found you. I don't know how I found through Google or something like, but it's you. So we really would like to invite you in the team, and whatever will be going towards next, you will be there with us, and we are with you in any manner. How what we can do for you will be there. And the best thing of this family is they were very helpful to each other. They were very open and ready to contribute. Nancy, David, Robert, Getry, and but we have a little bit struggle, Melanie, because we are in different time zone. So it's not we meet every day uh, or like week. We have scheduled time and very structured fixed timing of meetings. We are not go beyond that and all. So that will be really taken care of that. So it's warm welcome to you, and yeah, that's all I have to say. And thank you for joining us today. It was enriched session that we have, and we'll connect it over emails and phones. And I'm apologize for not being adding you in mailing list. So I will add you today, and hoping to see you in next one planning meeting.
Thank you so much, Rahul, and thank everyone, Petri, Nancy, much.
Okay.
Rahul, before we go,
Yes, Ketri.
hello Rahul, before we go, I've just gotten hold of Lonida, and she was working on child protection policy that she needs to present in another meeting.
Okay.
So she's asking, she's open for a meeting with us. So will Saturday be okay?
Melanie,
Yes,
when we meet to plan so far, we have kind of fallen into a timing of around 8:30. my time, it's 9 o'clock. It would be 9 o'clock your Saturday evening. Is when we have met for planning. Not every time. I think we're trying to divide up, as Robert said, and be more focused. But that would be, if it were something for you to be part of, that would be the time. Is that a time that works for you? In general, assuming other emergencies or crises or workload has not come up. You're mute.
Melani, you are on mute.
Sorry, I think evening after 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., those times work for me. It's okay.
Yes, Getri, go ahead. We can plan, Nancy, we can plan, like we have to think about our timings, because if it is there, so we can start around 8 or 8:30. It is bit early for Getri and Robert, and you too also, but we have to just come back just 30 minutes before, so that we can have Melanie with us, and will really restrict ourselves in a structured timing in the meeting. So Getri, we can call Leonida for meetup to discuss the next dialogue, the details and all.
So Rahul, I would need to be clear. Are you saying that you would like it, the time to be 8 o'clock in the evening on Saturday night for you, which is 6:30 Getri's dinner time? Does that work for both of you? I can definitely make it work here. It's 8 in the morning for me. That's not a problem.
I'm on for it. Not a problem. Getri,
I think I
Are
can
you-
sacrifice. I can always do dinner after that. So yeah, I'll write her, but then we need to share the link with her. So probably by Friday.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Melani, maybe one last little question I would like to ask you. We are used to working together, and we have our ongoing questions, tasks, issues. But as you are coming in a new voice with new insights, a fresh perspective, perhaps there are things in particular that you would like to invite this group to think about or focus on and include in the agenda. If there's something right now you can say, good, or if you want to text or write later, so that you're part of that thinking from the beginning.
Okay. I will, I'll follow the conversation on the group. We will be sharing that there, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I will go through and I will add in. Thank you, Nancy.
And Lenny, never believe Nancy when she says one last question. She has a very active mind, and she will, as soon as you finish starting to answer that question, she will have her next question in mind. Okay, bye-bye.
Getri, you're right. We've got to do something about these men.
Hello, Rahul. Good to see you.
Don't worry. We'll put them in their place, Rahul. Get hold of yourself.
I have an escape hatch, Getri. If you look at our Nancy's and my wedding vows, you will find that I promised to be her wife.
It was an accident, but I have held him.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, it was a very good wedding.
It's why our marriage is such a
Did you hear
success.
that?
2 wives, no husbands.
I didn't hear.
So,
Okay.
guys,
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
yeah.
Good night. Yes.
Good night.
Good night, Robert. Good night, Rahul. Good night,
Good night,
Melanie.
everyone.
Nancy,
Love you
take
all.
care of
Thank you,
yourself,
Melanie.
and Ray.
Good night, Sister. Robert is up.
Just making sure that I have the.
Nancy,
Yes,
Nancy,
Gayatri, you'd be
how did
so
that
proud of
go?
the wonderful thing I did for you. I'll send it to you. And she was going to try to record it. So we'll see how my friend Emmeline's presentation about the amazing Gayatri Agiza of Kenya, how that went for her.
Thank
But in
you.
reading back over my notes from our conversation and making up a slideshow, I was really moved. It made me feel that I knew you that much better. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, you'll send me what you have and I can see and look at myself.
Yep, be very proud. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay, bye-bye. Take care of yourselves. Ray,
Go there.
bye.
You too.